You wake up with plans. Big ones. You tell yourself this is the day everything changes. No more procrastination, no more self-doubt, no more spirals. But by noon, you've scrolled past 47 reels, avoided 3 critical emails, and convinced yourself that tomorrow is your real start. Sound familiar? Now here's the disturbing truth. Self-sabotage isn't a weakness. It's a deeply wired survival mechanism. Your brain, yes, the same one dreaming of success, is actively working against you, and it thinks it's protecting you. From the outside, it looks like laziness, fear, or lack of discipline. But inside, it's a chaotic war zone of childhood imprints, subconscious fears, and a twisted sense of comfort in chaos. You don't fail because you're not trying. You fail because some hidden part of you is terrified of what happens if you actually succeed. This isn't about motivation. It's about identity. And the darkest part? Most people never figure it out because the enemy wears their face. The lie of control, 1,000 words. You think you're in control. You choose when to work, when to rest, what to pursue, what to avoid. But what if I told you, most of those decisions, they're not truly yours. They're habits, defenses, loops. Let's start with a simple but uncomfortable truth. Self-sabotage almost never looks like sabotage. It looks like safety. You skip the job application not because you're lazy, but because the idea of rejection triggers the same neural pain as physical injury. You cancel the date not because you're too busy, but because part of you learned long ago that closeness leads to abandonment. You miss the deadline, not because you're disorganized, but because failure on your terms feels safer than success on someone else's. And all of this masquerades as control. The human mind craves predictability, even when that predictability hurts. If your childhood taught you that love meant being invisible or that safety meant shrinking to survive, you'll repeat those patterns not because they're good, but because they're familiar. In psychology, we call this cognitive distortion. It's when your brain forms a warped map of reality, then navigates your life by it, like using a cracked compass in a forest. Keeps you from risk, from growth, from even hoping too much. Because somewhere, deep in your neural wiring, you've equated hope with danger. Let's make this more real. Case study. The girl who wouldn't pass a clinical psychologist once treated a straight-A student who failed her final exam on purpose. She admitted it openly. Why? Because if she passed, her parents would force her into a medical college she didn't want. But if she failed, she could say, "I'm not good enough. I guess I wasn't cut out for it." Her failure gave her freedom, but it also gave her shame. See how twisted that is? She chose failure not because she wanted to lose, but because she needed a story that wouldn't trigger conflict. That's self-sabotage. A trade. Pain now to avoid a deeper pain later. But here's the kicker. This isn't rare. In fact, it's terrifyingly common. Because most of us learned early that some truths are too dangerous to face head-on. So we build walls. Excuses. Delays. Procrastination. We convince ourselves we're just not ready, when what we really mean is, I don't feel safe becoming who I say I want to be. Think about it. How many times have you waited for the perfect time to start something important? That time never comes. Not because you're not ready, but because your brain is addicted to the illusion of preparation. Because planning feels safer than doing. Because if you don't start, you can't really fail. And in that illusion, you stay in control. The comfort zone. A psychological trap. Here's a dark psychological truth. Your comfort zone isn't designed to keep you happy. It's designed to keep you unchanged. Even if unchanged means miserable. Your comfort zone is where your nervous system doesn't get surprised. That's it. It doesn't care if your comfort zone includes toxic relationships, chronic avoidance, or destructive habits. If that's what your nervous system is used to, that's what it will seek. Because that's where it knows the rules. And to your primal brain, predictable pain is safer than unpredictable possibility. You might say, but I want to change. Yes, you do. But your brain is not convinced. Because change is uncertainty. Uncertainty is risk. Risk is danger. So your brain triggers anxiety, distraction, perfectionism, delay. Any tactic it can just to pull you back to the known. Even if the known is destroying you. Internalized control, here's where it gets even darker. At some point, the people who taught you fear don't need to be there anymore. You internalize them. You become your own critic, your own punisher, your own limiter. This is what psychologists call introjection, the unconscious adoption of external voices into your internal identity. The critical parent, the disapproving teacher, the absent lover. Their voices become your own, and you mistake it for reality. So when you whisper to yourself, "I'll probably mess this up," or "Who am I to even try?" it doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels like truth. But it's not. It's just an old voice, trapped in your nervous system, still trying to keep you safe in all the wrong ways. The illusion of control. Now here's the paradox. We sabotage ourselves to feel in control. But in reality, we're being controlled by fear, by memory, by scripts we never wrote. And because it feels like we're choosing it, we don't notice the trap. It's like holding the steering wheel of a car that's actually on autopilot, heading toward a cliff. Control is an illusion if you never question what's driving you. Let that sit for a second. How much of your self-control is really just self-containment? How many of your goals have been quietly buried under logical reasons that were just emotionally camouflaged fears? How much of your life are you managing, but not actually living? The saboteur in your head, 1,000 words. You talk to yourself every day, in the mirror, while walking, right before you fall asleep. But have you ever really listened to that voice? Not just what it says, but how it says it. Because that voice, the one that whispers you're not good enough, you'll fail anyway, or don't even bother, that's not really you. That's the saboteur. And it's been with you for years. It doesn't scream. It doesn't slam doors. It's quiet, calculated, familiar, which is what makes it dangerous. Because it sounds like your own thoughts. It uses your tone, your language, your fears, and it convinces you that playing small is being smart, that hesitating is being careful, that staying silent is being strong. You don't even realize it's sabotaging you because it feels so intimately you. But here's the thing, it's not. It was built, slowly, layer by layer, from the moments in your life when you felt unsafe, unseen, or unloved, when you failed and someone laughed, when you succeeded and someone got angry, when you cried and were told to toughen up. Those moments, they didn't just sting, they carved new beliefs into your subconscious. Beliefs that said, don't shine too brightly, don't trust too easily, don't try too hard, because trying means risk, and risk means pain. So instead of growing, you learned to protect. But protection came with a cost. It required you to internalize fear as wisdom, to mistake silence for strength, to start anticipating rejection before it even happens, just so it hurts a little less when it finally does. That's the saboteur's logic. Beat them to it. Fail before they can tell you you're not good enough. Quit before you get left. Hide before you get exposed. This internal saboteur doesn't just live in your fears. It thrives in your identity. It convinces you that certain things are just not for people like you. Not because they're truly out of reach, but because reaching feels threatening. Wanting something deeply and then not getting it, that can destroy a fragile self-image. So instead, the saboteur convinces you not to want it at all, or to pretend you don't, or to chase it half-heartedly so you have a ready excuse when you fall short. Have you ever noticed how you self-limit even when there's no visible threat? That's not coincidence. It's the unconscious mind working in defense mode. Psychological studies show that we build entire mental identities around avoiding pain. These identities are built not on truth, but on emotion, on what once felt unbearable. And now, anytime you get close to that same emotional edge, uncertainty, vulnerability, even hope, your mind triggers resistance. Not because it's bad, but because it's unfamiliar. And the unfamiliar, to the brain, feels like danger. In fact, neuroscience backs this up. The amygdala, your brain's fear center, can't distinguish between actual physical threats and emotional discomfort. So, when you dare to step outside your comfort zone, even slightly, your nervous system lights up as if you're being hunted. Heart rate increases, palms sweat, Focus blurs. And in those moments, your inner saboteur steps in not as a villain, but as a savior. Go back, it says. You're not ready. This is too much. Play it safe. And because those thoughts feel like truth, you obey. But the scariest part? The more you listen to that voice, the stronger it becomes. It gets smarter. It learns your habits, your escape routes, your pressure points. It adapts. So what began as a quiet whisper of doubt becomes a constant background hum of limitation. You don't even notice how much of your life is being dictated by fear, because fear has become your normal. It shows up in your relationships too. That friend you ghosted without explanation? The dream job you never applied for? The boundaries you never set? That was sabotage, not in action but in hesitation, in avoidance, in the decisions you didn't make. Because sabotage isn't always loud. Often it's quiet, passive. It hides in inaction where it's harder to detect, but just as destructive. There's a name for this in psychology: ego preservation. Your ego, the mental image you've built of yourself, wants to survive at all costs. And if chasing growth means risking ego death, the saboteur will intervene. Every single time. Even if it means robbing you of peace, joy, or connection. Because ego doesn't care about fulfillment, it cares about survival. And it will do anything to preserve the story it knows. Even if that story is painful. Even if it means you never evolve. So how do you stop it? You start by recognizing that this voice isn't truth. It's a program. A defense system that kicked in when you were too young to fight back. It helped you then. But now, it's outdated. Unnecessary. It's like software running on a computer that's evolved 10 versions ahead. You've outgrown it. You just haven't told your brain yet. Awareness is the first disruption. When you catch the thought, I'll probably fail. This won't work out. I'm not cut out for this. Pause. Ask yourself, whose voice is that? Is that really me? Or a version of me still trying to survive a past that no longer exists? Because here's the liberating truth. You don't have to listen to the saboteur forever. You can hear it, understand it, even thank it for trying to protect you, and still choose differently. That's where real power begins. Not in silencing the voice, but in refusing to let it steer the wheel. The next time fear shows up masked as logic, or self-doubt pretends to be realism, remember, sabotage doesn't always come with a red flag. Sometimes it arrives dressed as common sense. But now you know better. And the next time it whispers, maybe you won't believe it so quickly. Addicted to chaos, 1,000 words. There's a strange comfort in chaos. A twisted sense of familiarity that keeps people running in circles. Not because they enjoy it, but because stillness feels foreign. If you've ever found yourself in a constant cycle of fixing, stressing, rushing, or surviving, without any real external threat, you're not alone. And more importantly, it's not random. Your brain may very well be addicted to chaos. Addiction doesn't always come from substances. Sometimes it comes from states of mind, emotional patterns, neurochemical loops. And one of the most overlooked addictions is the craving for dysfunction, not consciously but neurologically. When you grow up around stress, emotional volatility, unpredictability, or criticism, your brain wires itself around those patterns. It becomes used to cortisol, adrenaline, hypervigilance. It learns that anxiety equals awareness, that calm equals danger, and that rest is suspicious. So even as an adult, when things are finally quiet, your brain panics. It doesn't trust peace. Many people unknowingly recreate the very conditions that once traumatized them, because familiarity feels safer than the unknown. A person who grew up around emotional outbursts may start arguments without realizing why. Someone raised in financial instability might unconsciously sabotage opportunities for security. It's not that they want to struggle. It's that their nervous system doesn't recognize anything else as safe. The brain is a prediction machine. It would rather stay in a painful reality it understands than risk stepping into a new one it doesn't. That's why so many people get uncomfortable when things go well. Ever had something good happen? A new relationship, job, achievement, and suddenly felt anxiety creeping in? That's not self-awareness. That's the chaos addict inside you. Warning, This won't last. Better prepare for the fall. You start overthinking, creating problems where there are none, sabotaging what you've worked for, not because you're broken, but because your brain doesn't know how to exist in harmony without bracing for disaster. The technical term for this is homeostatic resistance. Your internal system wants to return to its set point, even if that set point is chaos. There's a cruel irony here. The more you try to grow, the more chaos your mind will stir up, not to harm you, but to pull you back to the familiar. You'll notice it in the form of sudden anxiety attacks during peace, unexplained dread right before milestones, or intense cravings for destructive habits right when things start going right. Think about the people who always seem to attract drama. New city, same toxic relationships. New job, same chaos. New goal, same sabotage. It's not fate. It's pattern repetition. The same unresolved internal settings recreating the same external environment over and over until the lesson is faced, not avoided. And it's not just relationships or careers. It's internal too. Ever noticed how silence makes you uncomfortable? Like you need background noise, TV, music, notifications just to exist? That's not boredom. That's withdrawal. Your brain is used to stimulation, to conflict, to distraction. Silence is too honest, too exposing. So you run. But here's what makes this especially dark. The body responds to stress like it does to drugs. When you live in a constant state of stress, your body starts releasing dopamine in response to chaos. It wires pleasure into pain, which means that dysfunction can actually feel good. You don't just tolerate the chaos, you chase it. And that chasing becomes identity. You start defining yourself by your struggle. I just work better under pressure. I can't focus unless I'm on a deadline. I'm a mess. But that's just who I am. No, it's not. That's the voice of the addiction talking. Because if you believed peace was possible, you'd have to admit that your chaos is a choice. And that's a terrifying level of responsibility. This chaos doesn't only affect your mind, it affects your biology. Chronic stress reshapes your brain. Studies show that long-term exposure to high cortisol levels actually shrinks the hippocampus, the part of your brain responsible for memory and learning. That means the longer you stay in chaos, the harder it becomes to escape it. Not just emotionally, but neurologically. Worse, chaos creates tunnel vision. When your brain is in survival mode, it can't access the parts of your mind responsible for creativity, foresight, or emotional regulation. You can't plan a future when your brain thinks it's under attack. So you react instead of respond. You explode instead of pause. You escape instead of reflect. And then you blame yourself for the aftermath. This becomes a cycle. Stress leads to poor decisions, which lead to more stress, which leads to more poor decisions. And round you go. The only way to break the cycle is to learn how to sit in stillness, how to let your nervous system come down without interpreting it as threat. But that's not easy, because the first time you experience real peace, it might feel like emptiness. Like something's missing. That's the addiction talking. That's the part of you that only feels alive when there's a fire to put out. But fires don't make you alive. They make you burnt out. The truth is, peace isn't boring. It's unfamiliar. And unfamiliarity takes time to feel safe. You won't heal overnight. You won't suddenly love silence or crave stillness. But you can start building tolerance. One moment at a time. One quiet evening at a time. One conscious decision not to pick the familiar fight or re-enter the old loop. You are not your chaos. You are just used to it. And you can learn something different. The more you choose calm, the more your brain rewires. The more you sit with discomfort, the more your system expands. Until one day, peace isn't scary anymore. It's home. Are you ready to go even deeper? Success as a threat, 1,000 words. Everyone talks about the fear of failure. It's the easiest to name, the most socially accepted, the one that earns nods of sympathy. But what if the real fear isn't failure? It's success. That sounds backwards, right? Who wouldn't want to succeed? Who wouldn't want to reach their goals, be recognized, feel proud of what they've built? The truth is, a lot of people, probably more than you think. And if you've ever found yourself slowing down just as things start to go well, procrastinating after a big win, or feeling oddly anxious at the thought of actually reaching your goal. You might be one of them. Here's where it gets psychologically fascinating. Success is not just about gaining something, it's about becoming someone. And anytime identity is involved, the subconscious wakes up. Because success, in its raw form, threatens the most fragile part of the human psyche, who you believe yourself to be. Your identity, your worth, your place in the world. Think of it this way. If you've spent years seeing yourself as the underdog, the broken one, the struggler, or the overlooked, then success doesn't just bring rewards. It challenges your narrative. It forces you to rewire the core beliefs that have kept you emotionally safe for years. That's terrifying. Because if you succeed, then what? What do you become? Who are you without the struggle? The mind doesn't like unfamiliar ground, especially when that ground requires us to let go of a story that, while painful, has become comfortable. It's like trying to sleep in a new bed. The old one might have been lumpy, but at least you knew where all the lumps were. Now everything's soft and smooth, but your body can't rest. That's what success feels like to the traumatized or chronically overlooked mind. It's not peace, it's disorientation. And when your nervous system is used to chaos, success feels like a trap, like something you're not supposed to touch. You might even hear yourself think, "This is too good to be true. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop." Or, "They're going to find out I'm a fraud." Those thoughts aren't random. They're defense mechanisms, psychological armor. Because to your subconscious, success equals visibility. And visibility equals vulnerability. And vulnerability, if you've been hurt in the past, equals danger. This is the root of imposter syndrome. The persistent fear of being found out as incompetent, even when evidence shows you're doing fine. Studies have shown that imposter syndrome is especially common among high achievers. Why? Because achieving something doesn't automatically update your internal identity. You still feel like the same person, just in a better costume. Success requires a new self-image, a new level of self-trust, a willingness to be seen, judged, celebrated, and possibly resented. For many, that's too much, so they pull back. Quietly, subconsciously, they miss opportunities, delay projects, sabotage relationships, or lower their own goals just enough to avoid crossing that invisible line where things start to feel real. And here's the kicker. The fear of success is often stronger than the fear of failure, because failure confirms what your inner critic already believes. "See? I knew you couldn't do it." It's painful, yes, but it's predictable. Success, on the other hand, shatters that inner script. It forces you to reckon with a new truth. Maybe I am capable. Maybe I do deserve more. And that truth, while empowering, is deeply uncomfortable when it clashes with years of self-doubt. So what happens? The brain rebels. You start picking apart your own wins. "It wasn't that impressive. I just got lucky. Anyone could have done." Studies in behavioral psychology show that people who experience sudden success often face physiological symptoms: insomnia, fatigue, increased anxiety. Not because anything's wrong, but because their nervous system is processing a massive identity shift. It's like emotional altitude sickness. You've climbed too fast, and now your body doesn't know how to breathe. That's why people crash after big milestones. The athlete who spirals after winning. The writer who sinks into depression after publishing. The entrepreneur who feels numb after a huge launch. It's not just exhaustion, it's grief. A quiet mourning for the identity they just left behind. Success cost them something, and their psyche is reckoning with the price. The tragic part? Most people don't recognize this. They mistake their discomfort as a sign that success wasn't for them. So they retreat. They go back to what's familiar, even if it hurts, because at least it makes sense. But here's the truth. The discomfort you feel in success is not a sign you're on the wrong path. It's a sign you're growing. You're stepping into a version of yourself that your past can't explain. That's going to feel weird, unsteady, sometimes even painful. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. You are allowed to succeed and still feel scared. You're allowed to win and still grieve. You're allowed to step into the light and still feel the shadows tugging at your feet. What matters is that you don't let that fear decide your direction. Because success is not just an external reward. It's an internal revolution. It's you choosing to believe in your worth, even when the echoes of your past scream otherwise. It's rewriting your story, not erasing it, but evolving beyond it. So the next time success knocks and you feel the urge to run, pause, breathe. Remember, this fear isn't truth. It's history. And you're not who you used to be. You're someone who's learning how to let success feel safe. Rewriting the pattern. You've seen the pattern now. You've watched it operate from the shadows, this cycle of sabotage, fear, identity conflict, and false control. But awareness alone isn't enough. Awareness opens the door. Choice walks you through it. The real question is, what do you do with this knowledge now? Here's where most people get stuck. They expect transformation to feel like motivation, like a surge of confidence, a sudden rush of certainty. But that's not how change works. In psychology, there's something called cognitive dissonance, a mental discomfort that happens when your actions no longer match your beliefs. That discomfort is a signal you're breaking the old loop. And it almost never feels good at first. Growth isn't a high, it's a disruption. So the first step in rewriting the pattern is expecting resistance. Not avoiding it. Not being surprised by it. Expecting it. When your brain starts whispering, "This won't work," or "This is stupid," recognize it for what it is. The saboteur doing its job. That voice isn't proof something's wrong. It's proof something's changing. The second step? Stop waiting for the fear to go away. That's the lie that keeps people stuck. Once I'm not scared, then I'll start. But fear doesn't vanish with time. It dissolves through movement, through action. Every time you move toward the thing that scares you and survive it, your nervous system recalibrates. It learns. It evolves. And eventually, what once felt dangerous becomes neutral, then natural, then empowering. But don't make the mistake of thinking big shifts require big actions. They don't. In fact, they usually start with tiny ones. Psychology calls this behavioral activation. The idea is simple. Do something small, repeat it, let it reshape how your brain perceives you. Want to stop procrastinating? Start by setting a 2-minute timer and doing just one step. Want to stop self-sabotaging in relationships? Try sending the text, even if it makes your stomach twist. Tiny disruptions over time become new neural highways. This is how habits are restructured, not by force, but by consistency. And here's something you probably need to hear. You're not broken. You're patterned. Everything you've done to hurt yourself was a solution at some point. Even if it's outdated now, it served a purpose once. Maybe it protected you. Maybe it helped you cope. Maybe it gave you control in a time when everything else felt chaotic. That matters. And it deserves compassion, not shame. Rewriting the pattern requires forgiveness, not just of others, but of yourself. Self-sabotage is not a character flaw. It's a strategy, a misguided, fear-driven attempt to keep you safe. But you're not living in those old conditions anymore. And you have the power now to create safety in a new way, one built on clarity, not fear. On truth, not trauma. Part of that truth is learning how to listen to yourself differently. Not the saboteur. Not the critic, but the deeper part, the part that wants peace, even if it doesn't know how to receive it yet. That voice is quieter, but it's always been there. And the more you practice stillness, meditation, breath work, journaling, or just intentional silence, the louder it becomes. You'll begin to notice new thoughts. Maybe I can handle this. What if this time is different? I don't have to go back just because it's familiar. These aren't just thoughts, they're signs of rewiring. Evidence that you're no longer living as a reaction, but as a choice. Still, there will be setbacks. Of course there will. You'll have days where the old patterns win, where you scroll for hours or lash out or ghost someone who didn't deserve it. Don't turn those moments into definitions. They're data, not destiny. Each time you relapse into the old self, you're collecting feedback. Why did I do that? What triggered it? What did I need in that moment? Curiosity, not judgment. That's how the pattern dissolves. And here's where things get powerful. Once you stop seeing your sabotage as failure and start seeing it as information, you reclaim control. Real control. Not the illusion you clung to before. Not the rigid, defensive version. But a flexible, grounded kind of control, the kind that can handle uncertainty without imploding. That kind of control feels like ease, like trust, like saying yes to opportunities without waiting for the voice to tell you you're ready, like setting boundaries without apology, like choosing rest without guilt, like letting yourself want things deeply without the fear of being punished for it. That's what healing sabotage really is. It's not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming free. And freedom isn't just the absence of sabotage. It's the presence of alignment, where your actions match your desires, where your energy no longer leaks into hiding, pretending, or second-guessing, where success doesn't scare you, peace doesn't bore you, and failure doesn't define you. You're not who you were when this journey started. Even if you still feel the old fears, even if the voice still whispers, you've seen behind the curtain now. You know the pattern. You understand the game. And that means you don't have to play it the same way anymore. So the next time you feel that familiar urge, to shrink, to run, to destroy what you've built, pause, breathe, look it in the eye, and say, not this time. You're not that person anymore. You're the one who made it to this moment. You're the one who rewrote the story. And this time you're going to finish it,